Well, folks, it's time to kick it old school. So you can feel cool. Give it to me, baby. Yeah.
Rockford Fosgate. Anybody who knows car audio, even those who don't know car audio, have heard this brand. But what about Fosgate Electronics? How many of you guys have heard that or know what I'm even talking about? Fosgate Electronics was started in the 1970s by James Wayne Fosgate, also known as Jim Fosgate, who was born in 1945 and had a broad audio career as an inventor. In the early 1970s, Proline Frequency Energizer and Fosgate Electronics Frequency Energizer were his first parts for the audio market. These were home audio devices which incorporated a low frequency and high frequency adjustment to adjust the curve of the sound of the music to make it sound more appealing to people. Kind of had that V curve, if you know what I mean. Frequency Energizer provided up to 18 dB of boost at 45 Hz and also up to 12 dB at 20 kHz, and gave you the option for several sources and different slopes as well. This Frequency Energizer device was well ahead of its time, and in fact, the patent number 3883832, the single element controlled parallel T audio network, was the genesis of the Punch EQ and the Rockford Fosgate amplifiers in the 80s and 90s. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's step back to the 1970s and talk more about that. Summer CES 1973 in Chicago, Fosgate Electronics introduced the PR7000 amplifier, which integrated the Frequency Energizer circuit as well as an amplifier for the automobile. Fosgate called the PR7000 the PowerPunch, and this model came out initially with a $300 price tag, which is equivalent to $1,850 in 2021 prices. The other thing you have to remember is, during this time back in the 70s, the automobiles did not have very nice car stereos in them. In fact, most cars just had a single speaker in the center if you were lucky. Cars like the Dodge Charger, Ford Mustang, Chevrolet Nova, VW Beetle, if you really wanted to upgrade your sound system, you had to go for aftermarket. You had to cut holes in the back of the car and the rear deck. Spark-O-Matic 6x9s were very popular back in the day, so you needed an amp like the PR7000 to give you more power. Now, almost 50 years later, we're going to take a closer look at a Punch PR7000. Thanks to Michael Schultz for sending me these pictures of his brand new PowerPunch PR7000. We also came across some cool advertisements such as this one from an audio magazine. What's really odd is they put 35 watts per channel at 4 ohms, where we know it was rated 50 watts per channel, and also the bass boost, it said 18 dB at 55 Hz, and we know that's supposed to be 45 Hz. The manual itself, though, says 50 watts per channel at 4 ohms, 30 watts per channel at 8 ohms. And here is an ad from another magazine of a new product, and it says 20 watts per channel at 8 ohms. So you have to watch out for these marketing guys. Sometimes they get stuff wrong. What do you say about that, Kip from Kicker? A closer look here at the manual shows the 50 watts per channel at 4 ohms, 30 watts per channel at 8 ohms, we already mentioned that, in addition to the current draw, 0.3 amps no signal, 3.5 amps average listening level, 15 amps full RMS power, both channels driven at 4 ohms. When the PowerPunch PR7000 hit the market, there were very few separate automotive amplifiers at the time, but this one with the bass and treble controls really stood out. It was something you didn't see in any other amplifier. And Fosgate used this and told people, hey, this is a unique design. It can boost up your bass. It can give you some extra treble. It can knock out some of that boomy sound that you have. So it was really marketed for people to get better sound with the speakers they had, which at the time, typically 6x9s were around the largest speakers at the time. Here on the unit, you can see the low frequency control for up to 18 dB of boost at 45 Hz. On the right side, we have the high frequency adjustment up to 12 dB at 20 kHz. Then you have input selection, radio or tape. No streaming switch here. Power switch for off or on. And then notice the PowerPunch itself. The O in PowerPunch is your power LED, which is super cool. At the time, the Punch PR7000 was one of the only amplifiers that had RCA inputs. High impedance, low level RCA inputs were available, as well as the typical low impedance, high level inputs from your source unit. Also, it had 14 gauge 12 volt and ground inputs with a 10 amp fuse. The amplifier also included a gain setting for normal or high. It was just a switch, so you didn't have any variation between the two. And the speaker outputs were just on these standard screw down terminals. I will show these here when I connect the amp. And a 12 volt output for powering something like your head unit or some other 12 volt source. Also on the back you see the model number PR7000, there's a serial number, as well as Made in the USA logo. Now the other thing on the left side of the unit is a 1/4 inch jack, and what is that? Believe it or not, this is a headphone jack. And Fosgate warns you full power is available at this jack and it may be necessary to add an attenuator. Yeah, be careful with that, folks. As far as dimensions, 5.8 inches wide, 5 inches deep by 2.9 inches tall, so it's really a small unit. You can see it compared to the CD there. But overall, this unit is really slick looking, definitely 70s, super retro, and super awesome. Now before I chance it and power this unit up, I wanted to take a look at the insides, make sure it's okay. And 1.5 millimeter here with the Allen key, that's with the specialty screwdriver here. Check the link in the video description. Take off the knobs here off the front of the unit. Very simple to remove those. You also need to remove the shaft nuts here, which are very similar to the head units at the time, which use the same style car stereo nuts. And then we'll take the faceplate off of the front. Now, the one thing I noticed is this faceplate looked kind of grungy. You know, back in the day, a lot of people smoked in their cars, and there's no telling what other kind of airborne chemicals got stuck on the front of this unit. So I decided I was going to use some of the Crisp Fix soapy water, and we're going to clean up the front of this unit here. And you can tell just by the paper towel here how dirty it was. So I rinsed it off and actually did it a couple more times and got it really clean. So it looks really, really good. Looks like brand new almost. But let's take some more screws out of the unit here so that we can find out what it looks like inside. So there's 2 screws on the front, there's 2 on the back. They're slotted screws. Then we have to pry up the top so that we can see inside. So I'll show you the gut shots later. First off, let's try to find out, does it work though? And we have to split this power cable here and check the fuse inside, make sure it's okay. And we went ahead and replaced it just to make sure it was good. 10 amp fuse as they require. Actually, we put a 5 amp fuse in there just to be safe, but let's see what happens. Let's catch it on video. Can it possibly power up? Almost 50 years old. Look at that. We have power.
You big dummy.
Holy crap. Unbelievable. Now that we have power, we're going to have to put some signal to it and see if we got an amplifier here, friends. Wow. Here you can see the connections for the speakers. You have to be super careful so they don't touch each other. And these are some of the worst speaker terminals ever, but a lot of the old units use these and RCA inputs, so let's try it. All right, here goes nothing. We have the speaker hooked up to the left output. We have RCA going in using the phone. Let's power it on. Oh, we heard a thump. Could we possibly get sound from this 50-year-old amplifier? Let's find out. Oh, yes. Here's some old Denon speakers I have. I'm going to actually hook these up so we can see how they sound. I haven't tried both channels of the amp yet, but still I'm going to just try this left channel with a more full range speaker and let's see how it sounds. All right, let's power it up again. Red LED, Maser laser. Sounds kind of distorted. Definitely got some high ends there. So I can't give up quite that easily. I've done some more testing here with this PR7000 Also, I did some contact cleaner on some of the switches and stuff, and here you can see now both channels work. But I can't get a whole lot of volume, and it does start not sounding so great when I crank it up. Hear the distortion. Yeah, she's distorting. I'm not getting anywhere near the full output power of this amplifier, but again, being almost 50 years old, I'm amazed it even comes on. I'm sure that it needs to be recapped. It's a little bit of a bummer that I can't dyno test it, but maybe get somebody to fix it and then we can try it. What would you say? Wouldn't that be fun? I think so, but I think this has been pretty cool, even to see this thing work at all. Now hold up. You know I'm not going to leave you guys hanging like that. Guess what Big D has? That's right. We have a backup unit. Let's try this one and see if it works. Fosgate PR7000 number 2. Fingers crossed that this one actually works. We got it hooked up. We got a small 5 amp fuse just to protect it. Let's see. We have power. Let's try out music. Oh yeah. We're bumping. Now let's fire up the good old SMD, Demore Engineering Amplifier Dyno, to do our RMS power output testing of this amplifier. Before we do that, make sure you check the video description for links to Wilson Audio merch. Smash me a thumbs up and subscribe if you like this content. More like it coming all the time. Now let's talk about the Dyno tests. There's 3 different tests: certified, uncertified, and dynamic. Certified test takes us up to 1% THD, uncertified takes us up to the clipping point, and dynamic is a dynamic tone mimicking IHF 202 standard. I gotta be honest, it was really scary to test this amplifier on the dyno, but I decided it was gonna be cool enough to try it. So 8 ohms here, let's say it's rated 30 watts by 2 according to the manual. Certified test up to 1% THD, 1 kilohertz track. And look at this, right at it, 29 and 27 watts at 13.8 volts. Now let's reset the dyno for uncertified, which is up to clipping. And again, remember, this amp has never been touched, it's never been recapped or nothing. Amazing, 29 and 27 watts, 13.8 volts. Now let's try the dynamic burst, 1 kilohertz track. So close to that 30 watt rating, 29 and 28 watts, 13.75. Again, I was just shocked and blown away. Efficiency wise, 56% at 8 ohms, not great by any means, but again, this is one of the pioneers of car audio amplifiers. 4 ohms is rated 50 watts by 2. Again, the 1 kilohertz track is what we're doing here. Certified takes us up to 1% THD. And notice it kind of jumped there. We got 42 and 38 at 14.13. So not quite 50 watts. Let's try uncertified up to the clipping point, and we got closer, 46 and 42. But again, this amp has the original caps and everything original. So the fact that it even survived this just shocked me. And look at dynamic. We get right at this 50 watts. 49 and 50 watts at 14.22 volts. And efficiency wise at 4 ohms, yeah, it's horrible, 39%. But again, being an early amp, we're going to give it a pass. Now for the results, we have to say it's impressive for 45 years old and to not ever have been recapped or touched in any way. We got right at 30 watts at 8 ohms, which is, it's rated 30 watts by 2. And at 4 ohms, we got about 40 watts or so per channel. Now, if you go back to the Audio Magazine, July 1977, they tested this amp way back then. They got 22 watts at 8 ohms and 37 by 2 at 4 ohms. So that's not very far off from what we got almost 50 years later. Now having this amp with bass boost and treble boost, we got to know, do it Bump Doe? Make sure you stick around. This is a fun segment. right, let's try some of that bass boost and see how that punch bass works. This is Back Rub from YouTube Audio Library. I must say, playing with that amp with the speakers was a lot of fun. Too bad I can't play all the songs that I played back then, only the ones the YouTube Audio Library. But now let's take the amplifier, take the top off so that you can see the inside. And you can tell here it's a lot of spaghetti wiring. And it took several components to come apart before we were able to get inside. But here it is, single-sided board and a lot of direct jumper wires. For the input filtering, it's 16 volt 2200 microfarad, but notice they're Nichicon. These are really nice brand caps that are known to last for a while, and obviously they have lasted for a while because they still work. Protected by the patent 3883832. That's the punch EQ circuit, which we see here on the front, and the power supply is on the right side. The output section's over here on the left, as well as the input being at the top so you can hook up your RCAs or your speaker level inputs. So overall, very simple amp, but very revolutionary at the time. It's super awesome that this amp still works, because a lot of these were known to not work. And the fact that it took two, one of them still worked, both of them actually worked, but one of them just distorted, probably needs to be recapped. So I tried to take it so I could take the bottom off so we could look at the bipolar transistors that these amps came with, but it was going to require me to desolder a lot of the connections, and I wasn't comfortable doing that with this amp, with it being the vintage that it is. So I didn't. I tried to get some pictures, and I had some of my friends check it out who are technicians, and these are bipolar. There was no MOSFETs at the time that were utilizing car audio amplifiers, but the sound quality is really good. The amplifier did not get too hot. This thermal image here was taken right after I did a lot of the tests, and I didn't see anything over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's not bad at all. But it's always cool to see the Predator version of an amplifier. Now, the one thing I did notice is the RCA jacks are super close together, so if you have some of the thicker RCAs, they will not work. So this was a fun video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. The Punch PR7000, one of the first car audio amplifiers that were available, component amplifiers, handful of other ones as well, but from Fosgate this was the first, and the first with the bass and treble EQ circuitry. So super cool. Jim Fosgate, we owe him a lot in car audio, and the fact that this amplifier still works is super cool to be able to show you guys how much power it puts out, as well as playing it with some speakers. It's Big D. Until next time, I'm out of here. Alright, I had to turn the song down some so we could try all the bass levels. Here we go. This is zero bass. I can imagine that bass boost probably blew a lot of speakers back in the day.
That's what it looks like inside. It was pretty compact. Had a huge heatsink on the bottom. It has the same circuit as the frequency energizer here on the front board. Then we had the power amp in here.
You know, the original Fosgate amplifiers, I mean, I've read the stories and talked about, they were like, you build 6 and 9 of them come back, and you wonder where the 3 that don't work came from.
Yeah, it was really difficult. Jim, towards the end, wound up really struggling. But like I said, everything worked out for him. He's a great guy, and he deserves to be successful, and thank goodness he is.